Joe Biden is back, baby, and that's a problem if you were a Democrat. I'll explain why. What's going on with Bernie and Warren, your Super Tuesday roundup, the Taliban piece didn't last very long. All that's coming up right now on I'm Right. Well, Super Tuesday was quite a Super Tuesday, and it did not go quite the way some of the candidates wanted it to go. So let's do just a brief recap. You know, we've got just a couple days ago, Amy Klobuchar is still in the race. Pete Buttigieg is still in the race. And there's all this concern about Bernie Sanders. The National Democrats are scared to death that he's going to become the nominee and not play ball the way you're supposed to play ball, and also destroy their down ballot candidates. Meaning, you know, if you're running for Congress somewhere and it's a swing district and Bernie Sanders is sitting on top of the ballot, they think he's going to kill him. So the National Democrats did something actually pretty impressive. Stupid, but impressive. They got two of the candidates, the more moderate candidates, if that's what you want to call them, they got them to jump out of the race and jump behind Biden. Essentially, they got the entire country, or the entire Democratic Party, to unite behind Joe Biden. Mike Bloomberg has even since dropped out of the race today and united behind Joe Biden. Now, it's impressive if you have that level of control of your party. I will tell you, I'm more of an individual freedom guy, but I still think it's impressive that the powers that be in the Democrat Party were able to look at their party and say, you know what? All right, he's got to go, and Klobuchar's got to go. And, well, now that Bloomberg's out, let's get him on board. And they were just able to pick and choose. And I think, you know, that's kind of impressive. But, and there's a big but here, all this momentum is with Joe Biden. Everybody today is calling Joe Biden the comeback kid, and Joe Biden, and look how impressive Biden is, and woo, he had a big Super Tuesday, and he did. He did. But Joe Biden is still Joe Biden, ladies and gentlemen. I don't care how many stripes you paint on that leopard, the spots are still there. And Joe Biden is, to be real nice about it, a walking GAFFE machine. Joe Biden is creepy. He's always smelling people. Joe Biden is mean. The same Joe Biden that was screaming at reporters, that was poking supporters in the chest, that called a voter who he needs in his corner fat, that same Joe Biden is still there, people. Joe Biden hasn't all of a sudden morphed into some superstar candidate because the Democratic Party united behind him and now he's the presumptive nominee. Joe Biden is still a walking grease fire. On top of the fact, I mean, look, I don't know what is wrong with Joe Biden, if there's something really degenerative wrong with him, or he's just getting senile, or maybe he's just this way. But the truth of the matter is, Joe Biden is not a good candidate. Joe Biden can't remember the state he's in, can't ever keep his train of thought. I'll play you a video in just a few of Joe Biden mistaking his wife for his sister. He's still Joe Biden is what I'm telling you. And what I'm telling you is it's impressive the Democratic Party can get all the candidates to unite behind one guy, but they picked the wrong guy. Joe Biden is not a superstar. And you can complain about people like Pete Buttigieg, and obviously I'm not a big fan, but you had a young, ambitious guy that, you know, you could have taken a chance on. You're facing a juggernaut. You're facing a political phenom in Donald Trump with a good economy, meaning you have a long shot to win the presidency. So you don't go with somebody who's old and safe just because he was vice president for 8 years. You don't go with a walking GAFFE machine. Take a chance. Get with Buttigieg. Shoot, go with Tulsi Gabbard, Andrew Yang. Do one of these outside-of-the-box candidates. It's bizarre that the party would be that dumb. You have all the power in the world, apparently, to choose your candidate, and you chose Joe Biden? I mean, this is Joe Biden.
By the way, this is my little sister, Valerie, and I'm Jill's husband. Oh, no, this is oh, you switched on me. This is my wife. This is my sister. They switched on me.
People, that would be a funny little bit if it was just that bit, but it's endless. I mean, I could occupy the entire next hour of the show showing you all the clips of Joe Biden saying things that are like, wait, what? And that's beyond all the creepy stuff. You know, we don't talk about it that much anymore, but Joe Biden, remember, he has a serious touching and sniffing problem, especially when it comes to kids and babies. look at this video. Does this make you comfortable? Watching this, does this make you comfortable? Imagine you're sitting there and that's your baby. What? Even the kid turns away. And by the way, I mean, 8, 9, 10 years old, always grabbing and touching and sniffing, and it's weird. And it comes off as weird. And maybe it's just one of these old timers that doesn't have a real good, sense of personal space. But that doesn't come off well. Oh, and he's a liar, a serial liar. He lied along, and he's been a serial liar forever. I remember he's lied about degrees. He lied about the whole Hunter Biden thing. Do you remember this wonderful story about taking on a gangster named Corn Pop?
This was the diving board area, and I was one of the guards, and they weren't allowed to. It was a 3-meter board. And if you fell off sideways, you landed on the darn cement over there. And Corn Pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys. And I did, and back in those days, to show how things have changed, one of the things you had to use, if you used pomade in your hair, you had to wear a bathing cap. And so he was up on the board, wouldn't listen to me. I said, "Hey, Esther, you, off the board, or I'll come up and drag you off." Well, he came off, and he said, "I'll meet you outside." My car, these were all public housing behind it. My car, there was a gate out here. I parked my car outside the gate. And he said, "I'll be waiting for you." He was waiting for 3 guys in straight razors. Not a joke.
What? I mean, that didn't happen. Not a single person in the world actually believes that happened. And Joe Biden has a history of this. Now, because he's always thought of as being, the jester, nobody takes him that seriously. But once he becomes the Democratic nominee, if it turns out he becomes the Democratic nominee, and that looks likely, he's going to have to answer for a lot of this stuff. He's going to have to convince Rust Belt swing voters why he wants to wipe out the energy industry and he'll be better for voters than Donald Trump is. They backed the wrong horse. So I'm sorry, I don't mean to burst your bubble. I know we have a bunch of Democrat viewers. If you're a Joe Biden fan or you think you had a good night, believe me when I tell you, you did not. You took a C- politician and you're going to make him the Democratic nominee for president of the United States of America. And Joe Biden ain't ready for prime time. Now, Bernie Sanders. Well, Bernie Sanders, he took it on the chin last night. I mean, he did win California, delegate-rich California with, I think, 400-some delegates. That's about 10% of all the delegates. So it's not like Bernie's out. He's already in talks today with Elizabeth Warren because Elizabeth Warren really, really, really hurts Bernie Sanders. She is so lame. She finished 3rd in her own state of Massachusetts, but she costs Bernie Massachusetts. She's costing Bernie. All the other moderates are getting out, and that helps Joe Biden. Elizabeth Warren staying in. It hurts Bernie Sanders, and it hurts him badly. So Bernie's going to have to do something that Bernie's not necessarily comfortable with. Bernie's going to have to call Elizabeth Warren, and he's going to have to make some promises. He's going to have to make some commitments. And you can yell and scream about that all you want, but ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, time to grow up. That's the way the game is played. Amy Klobuchar didn't drop out of the race and fly down to endorse Joe Biden just out of the good Midwestern goodness of her heart. Pete Buttigieg didn't drop out of the race within hours of Klobuchar and endorse Joe Biden, just because I just believe in Joe. They were all promised something. That's the way the game works. And the truth is, Bernie's going to have to promise something. Bernie's out there today saying he's still confident he's going to get the nomination.
It's a funny thing. 31 years ago today, we won the mayoral race in Burlington, Vermont. And we won that race against all of the odds. Everybody said it couldn't be done. And when we began this race for the presidency, everybody said it couldn't be done. But tonight, I tell you with absolute confidence, we are going to win the Democratic nomination. And we are going to defeat the most dangerous president in the history of this country.
Yeah, no, he's not. He's really not. And he's not going to be the nominee either. The reason last night was so devastating for Bernie, much more devastating for him than even Bloomberg, who's now out of the race. Bernie's now, he has enough delegates where he's going to stay in, and he's still going to win some states, and he's still going to keep fighting. But Bernie is not only fighting Joe Biden and the Democrat establishment and his own past comments, which are really hurting him, in particular with Cuban voters. Bernie is fighting time, ladies and gentlemen, because if he walks into the convention and he's not already the nominee, he's lost. He's universally hated by everyone within his own party. He's thought to be too dangerous to be the nominee. So he has to win this outright before the convention. And the fact that Joe Biden had such a massive night last night probably means he can't. So Bernie can get up and give all these speeches all he wants about, yeah, we're going to take the White House. No, he's not. Trump, of course, is still stirring the pot and getting those Bernie supporters riled up, took to Twitter and said, quote, the Democrat establishment came together and crushed Bernie Sanders again. Even the fact that Elizabeth Warren stayed in the race was devastating to Bernie and allowed Sleepy Joe to unthinkably win Massachusetts. It was a perfect storm with many good states remaining for Joe. Gosh, that's good. He's going to keep that up. Well, I have some devastating news to bring you. I'll show you that in just a second. Hang on. Well, we already know Bernie Sanders had a bad night. Joe Biden had a very good night, but Mike Bloomberg, I mean, ouch. Let's set aside the Elizabeth Warren stuff for just a moment because, let's be honest, she's not relevant, has not been relevant in the race, won't ever be relevant. But Mike Bloomberg spent, I mean, we don't have the exact numbers, 500 million, 700 million. Donald Trump says it was $1 billion real money. It was a lot of money. And when you get to numbers like that, it can get a little confusing because the number is so big, it gets lost. You understand that like $1 billion presidential campaign total is a big deal. It's a big deal. That's significant. Barack Obama raised more than that, but that's significant. Mike Bloomberg was in the race for like 15 minutes and spent $500 million. The guy was all over every single television show on earth. The guy was everywhere. He just poured money on everything. On top of that, he's spent years now pouring money into various Democrats across the country, state house, mayor seats, governor seats, buying favors, building up favors within the Democratic Party. And it was just all for naught. I have a hard time wrapping my mind around blowing that kind of cash. Now, before we continue to make fun of Bloomberg, let's be honest. He's worth $60 billion. So $500 million really is a drop in the bucket for him. Trust me, he's not sleeping in the poorhouse tonight. He'll be just fine. But that is such a stunning waste of money. My goodness, you don't normally see a man lose that kind of money that fast unless he gets divorced. Here's Van Jones on what happened with Bloomberg.
I think it's not a mystery what happened, why Joe Biden suddenly emerged. It wasn't about Joe Biden. Elizabeth Warren destroyed Bloomberg. Yeah. We haven't said her name. Elizabeth Warren, not Joe Biden, destroyed Bloomberg and knocked that out.
You should thank her.
Yeah, he should thank her.
Look, it's just that simple. That debate that he went out, the one I said he won, we can get to that in just a second. That debate where he went out with all the other candidates and they changed the rules to get Bloomberg on the stage because this is before they decided they were going to back Biden. And Bloomberg gets up there and Elizabeth Warren just crucifies him. And you remember that was the debate where she's her obnoxious self and she's waving her hands around the whole time. And I have a plan for that. And she's talking over everybody and interrupting everyone. And she's just absolutely terrible. But she did. She took about a 2 or 3 minute clip of Bloomberg having all these NDAs, these non-disclosure agreements signed with women that he has, look, I don't want to say what he did because I don't know, supposedly harassed, whatever. We don't know what he did because they all signed agreements and where he probably wrote a little check and they agreed to never talk about it again. And Elizabeth Warren chose to talk about it. And that was the country's real first introduction to Bloomberg, the person. Now, they'd all seen a TV commercial. I mean, my goodness, somebody in a mud hut in Rwanda has probably seen a Mike Bloomberg TV commercial at this point in time. But that was the first time you got to see an unproduced Mike Bloomberg, and he came off terribly. which again blows my mind because when you spend that kind of money, he wasn't just throwing it at TV. He was hiring comedians to help give him a personality. He had hired this guy and that guy and anybody with a brain, Bloomberg's stroking a check to. Hey, make me likable. And you didn't have anybody on your campaign staff that prepared you for being attacked on the debate stage? Everyone knew the baggage Bloomberg came in with. Everybody knew what somebody might potentially bring up. And when Warren went full nag on him, Bloomberg stood there and looked like a deer in the headlights. He had no answer for it at all. Trump, as you can imagine, see, Trump and Bloomberg have this thing. You see this a lot with rich guys, especially with rich New Yorkers who hate each other. It's pretty petty. We like to imagine that rich, powerful people, are somehow more advanced than we are. I mean, they sip caviar, and he went to Wharton School of Business or whatever it may be. They're just petty children, just like the rest of us. And Bloomberg and Trump genuinely hate each other. So Trump has enjoyed mocking everything about Bloomberg since he got in. He is now very much enjoying mocking Bloomberg that he's out. I mean, you remember what Trump just did at CPAC? It was hysterical. You remember this?
But that's all right. Because she had those burning embers, and then she started, but ultimately she failed. She's gone so. But she was really mean to Mini Mike. I'll tell you, the way she treated her. He didn't know what hit him. He's going, oh, get me off of this stage. Get me off. Get me off of this stage.
The best part of that video is when he steps back from the mic and he goes, it's true. It's true. It's just so subtly savage. So Bloomberg took to Twitter today because, again, that's where all of our major politics happens now. It's a funny world like that. Mike Bloomberg says, quote, 3 months ago, I entered the race to defeat Donald Trump. Today, I'm leaving for the same reason. Defeating Trump starts with uniting behind the candidate with the best shot to do it. It's clear that is my friend and great American Joe Biden. Well, you didn't think Donald Trump was just going to let Bloomberg waddle off into the sunset without bringing something up, did you? So Trump says, Mini Mike Bloomberg just quit the race for president. I could have told him long ago that he didn't have what it takes, and he would have saved himself $1 billion, the real cost. Now he will pour money into Sleepy Joe's campaign, hoping to save face. It won't work. And look, now Bloomberg has to do that awkward thing, but it's part of politics where you've been blasting away at somebody, and now Bloomberg's going to have to go out there publicly and act like he's Joe Biden's biggest fan. I mean, you remember what Bloomberg used to say about Biden?
We need somebody that can give us results, improve our school system.
So they can't do that?
I don't think that any of them have the experience to do it.
Joe Biden doesn't have the experience.
He's never been a manager of an organization. He's never run a school system. His wife actually is an educator and has good experience there. But no, I don't think any of them. It's the presidency shouldn't be a training job. You get in there, you got to hit the ground running.
Or when Bloomberg was saying he's the only one who can beat Trump.
That's one of the reasons why you've jumped in, because you think right now Trump is winning.
I think Trump is getting stronger, and I think he would just eat alive the candidates because they don't have plans that I think are practical, that can be implemented. They don't have management experience, and the president's job is a management job.
And now he has to do that awkward thing where he's going to act like Joe Biden is the savior. And why is he doing that, people? Well, again, it's not out of the goodness of Mike Bloomberg's heart. I'm not even sure that he has a heart in that tiny little chest. The truth of the matter is he's going to do that because he wants access to somebody who might be the president. That's why people do all these favors. That's why they throw that kind of money at things. Now, this part pains me, but I want you all to know, all of you fans of I'm Right to Know, that we have a production staff of terrible people. Therefore, they put together this little montage of me. I think this must be film edited or something, but here it is. I've told you several times that I think Mike Bloomberg now is going to be the nominee, and I do. I believe that. Look at Bloomberg, and I've said I think Bloomberg's going to be the nominee, and I look at the money, and I look at the ads, and the influence he's bought with other Democrats across the country. I believe this all the way. I'm saying Bloomberg's going to win it, that it's very good for Bloomberg, and they're going to make him the nominee. Well, I have this theory, Stephanie. I've had this theory that I think he's going to be the nominee.
Wait a minute, you think that he's going to be the Democratic nominee?
I do. Everybody's fired. All right, we're not done yet. Hang on. The Taliban, Afghanistan, what are we doing there? Look, ladies and gentlemen, I've already told you how critical I am of the fact that the president is negotiating with the Taliban. It's not that I don't think his heart's in the right place. I believe it is. The president wants us out of Afghanistan. He's been very open about that. He wants the United States of America to have a much smaller footprint on the world stage, which is actually what the founders wanted the United States to be, but that's another story, and I agree with that. I support all that. I think he's getting some really bad advice in trying to negotiate with barbarians like the Taliban. Plus, they're all divided. Just because you negotiate with this guy doesn't mean that guy in charge of that tribe is going to obey. And look, people need to answer for Afghanistan. And I'm under no illusion that that's actually going to happen here in the United States of America, where only people who aren't in the government club get prosecuted and examined. But ladies and gentlemen, let's not forget, we've been there for 19 years. Bleeding, dying, spending money. 19 years. And we have things from Donald Rumsfeld in 2003 admitting that he doesn't even know who the enemy is. From 2003, that means very, very early on, with guys over there getting shot and blown up, they knew. They knew we shouldn't be there. They didn't know who the enemy was. They didn't know what the mission was. At one point, we actually had our guys guarding the poppy fields. Yes, the poppy fields. You know, heroin, that's a reality. This whole thing has been a shame and an embarrassment. And when I say we shouldn't negotiate with the Taliban, we should just pack up and leave, I want you to understand something. I'm not under the impression that that's going to be clean or that that's going to be some peaceful process, because you know what happens? The Taliban are going to massacre everybody who allied with us the second we're gone. And I don't take any pleasure in that, because those are real lives. Just because they're not next door to me, just because they're people I don't know, doesn't mean that that just means nothing. But ladies and gentlemen, it's time. This whole thing is grossly unfair to the men and women of our armed services. And so we strike this peace deal. Of course, in about 2.5 seconds, the Taliban violate the peace deal. And now we're out there conducting airstrikes. Here's a tweet from Colonel Sonny Leggett. He's a spokesperson for the U.S. operation in Afghanistan. The U.S. conducted an airstrike on March 4th against Taliban fighters in the Nar-e-Siraj Helmand, who were actively attacking an ANSF checkpoint. That's Special Forces, by the way. This was a defensive strike to disrupt the attack. This was our first strike against the Taliban in 11 days. So we're right back to them bombing us and us bombing them. And it's not as if I'm critical of the airstrike. I'm critical of the fact we're attempting peace deals. We even had the President of the United States out there publicly praising the Taliban. Now, he didn't say they were saints, but he has to get up there and say nice words. They're very good fighters. They're monsters. They treat women like cattle. They're complete barbarians over there. The Taliban are barbarians. They're horrible people. There's nothing nice you can say about them. I wish we could vaporize everyone, but we can't. Plus, it's not our job. Pack it up, load up on a C-130, and call it a night, and let the chips fall where they may. I understand that sounds simplistic, but don't tell me anything sounds simplistic when you've made things way too complicated for the last 19 years. Sometimes the truth is simplistic. Oftentimes the truth is simplistic. It's time for us to go home. All right, we're going to talk to a Navy SEAL about that and other things in just a second. Hang on. Joining me now is former Navy SEAL Mike Ritland, and also founder of the Warrior Dog Foundation and creator of TeamDog.pet. Mike, before we get to all the Afghanistan stuff and Navy SEAL stuff, Tell me what this Warrior Dog Foundation is. What are you doing?
Sure. So I appreciate you having me on. The Warrior Dog Foundation is essentially a sanctuary for working dogs in a host of different capacities. I started it in August of 2010, where I got my first 2 dogs in from a special operations group that, these dogs had been wounded. Both of them had done multiple combat deployments and were at the tail end of their career and just couldn't physically do it anymore, but were temperamentally such that, that their handlers and other unit members couldn't take them into their home and provide a good home for them. So I took them in, and from that point on, at this point, 10 years later, we've taken in over 170 dogs of similar capacities from just about every operational unit that exists: Customs, Border Patrol, police departments, military, special operations, even security contracting dogs that have done, overseas State Department gigs and things like that. So we are here primarily as a resource to keep those dogs from being euthanized at the tail end of their career and give them kind of a second lot on life.
What do you mean temperamentally they couldn't be placed in just any home? Do dogs really, are dogs similar to humans in that they can have struggles when they come back? Is it just their training? Is it the breed? What do you mean by that?
For sure, there are. It's a combination of all of those things. They absolutely can have PTSD type symptoms, very similarly to people. We treat them a little differently in that because the dog doesn't have an ability to kind of reason and logically understand why they're having the issues that they're having. It's more of a simple association type of issue. So they may have some negative association with a certain stimuli that shuts them down or makes them reactively aggressive or whatever. And so we want to pair positive associations with that previously negative stimulus. So from a temperament standpoint, a lot of that is genetic. Some of it is training, some of it is experience. Most of it is genetic, and that we're taking these dogs who are bred, raised, and trained essentially from birth to be forwardly aggressive towards human beings. That's part of what they do. And so with most dogs, most house pets, forward aggression or aggression defensively or in any fashion is generally deemed as unacceptable or negative, and they try to stamp it out. With these dogs, not only are you allowing it, you're actually trying to harness, channel it, and ultimately build it and direct it in a certain manner so that you can use it to your advantage. And that's a kind of a fine line to walk, where you want a dog to be a real stud and go into a dark cave with somebody that isn't scared of losing their life, that they have to go fight and ultimately defeat. And then you bring them back home, and if your expectation is to throw them on the couch with the 3 little kids and the pet cat and the golden doodle, that doesn't usually pan out real well. Those dogs aren't really hardwired, nor trained, nor exposed to those environments to really be able to deal with that kind of stuff.
Is that mainly what they do? What's a dog doing with the Navy SEALs? Explain how you all use them.
Sure, it's a dual role. We call them dual purpose dogs. On the one hand, the apprehension component, which is, helping with ambushes, as an example, or finding people that are hiding in false floors or fake furniture or in bushes or, natural terrain, et cetera. On the detection side, the other purpose that we use them for is to find explosives, primarily in the military. Now with police, it can be narcotics, it can be human remains. There's a host of different capacities we use them in, but primarily the military uses on the detection side. They use dogs to locate explosives, whether it's IEDs or munitions caches or things of that nature.
Afghanistan. I am a big fan of the fact that the president wants to get us out of Afghanistan. I don't know whether or not you've been there. I'm assuming you've either been there or Iraq, probably multiple times, but I'm glad we're leaving. I don't like the peace deal with the Taliban thing for a couple of different reasons. One, I think it's going to make the president look dumb negotiating with monsters like that. And I just think if we're leaving, we should pack up and go. I realize there are complications when it comes to just packing up and going, but tell me what you think about it.
First off, I have not been to Afghanistan. I have been to Iraq. I agree, I would say pretty much wholeheartedly with you in that I think it's time to go. I think it's past time to go. I also echo your sentiments on it not being super easy to do that. I think we're at a point where it's kind of the lesser of two evils, in that I don't think just packing up and leaving is going to be seamless, nor is it going to be nonviolent, nor is it going to do some people any favors. But I think in looking at the 30,000-foot view, we've lost quite a bit there compared to what we've accomplished. I mean, at the initial goal of punching the gut of the country and the Taliban, as it were, in conjunction with Al Qaeda post 9/11, I think was justified, was necessary, and I think we ultimately did a pretty good job at that. But it's been quite some time, I think, since it's really made sense for us to have a continued presence there. And I too am glad to see us leave. I'd like to see us get out of there soon, right? I don't want to see a single another American soldier lose their life there on behalf of whatever we're trying to justify accomplishing.
Can you speak on, just briefly at least, the burden it puts on, especially the Special Operations Forces? People do not realize that. I mean, look, people love their Navy SEALs. They love their Delta Force guys. They want to watch the movies and the books and the high-speed stuff, and I'm glad they do that. But they don't realize these guys have families too. These guys are human beings. While they are the best of the best, they're not robots. And when you have somebody deploying 250 days a year, that can really tax you.
Agreed. I would extend that same level of care and courtesy to the entire United States military. Of course, special operations operational tempo is generally higher, a little more risky and adverse in terms of what the potential complications are, but it's hard on everybody. And I am a firm believer and a strong proponent of utilizing our nation's military in every capacity only when absolutely necessary and only for as long as necessary because of those burdens. It's both burdensome and it's incredibly dangerous. And I think that really across the board militarily, we should take a longer, harder look at how we use our guys and in what kind of rotations, and really only put them in those positions if it's absolutely necessary.
Totally agree. Mike Ritland of the Warrior Dog Foundation. I appreciate what you do, man. Semper Fi.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That's all for today, ladies and gentlemen. I will see you again tomorrow.